Jai Hind, my dear students. This is Shabna Mara, your felicitator. Today I have a new story, The Selfish Giant, by Oscar Wilde. Wilde was an Irish playwright, poet, and critic. He was born in Dublin. He wrote 9 plays, 1 novel, and numerous poems, short stories, and essays. Wilde wrote several stories for children. In 1888, he published The Happy Prince and Other Tales. Collection of 5 fairy stories he wrote for his 2 sons. The Happy Prince, The Nightingale and the Rose, The Selfish Giant, The Devoted Friend, and The Remarkable Rocket are his comprises volumes of his stories. Besides writing, Wilde was also passionate about fashion and interior decor and traveled widely to conduct lectures on these subjects. The Selfish Giant is the story all about the message for the children that how selfishness makes a person unhappy. It's all about the lesson to the kids that if the person is not helpful, kind, generous, so he never be happy. So the story runs thus. The children every afternoon came to play in the beautiful garden. The garden was large with beautiful flowers like stars and 12 peach trees that in the spring broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn they bore rich fruits. The children were very happy there. They cried to each other, but one day the giant came back from his friend Cornish Ogre. He stayed with his friend Cornish Ogre for 7 years, but now he came back to his garden and saw the children playing in the garden. He demanded in very gruff voice, "What are you doing here?" And children ran away. He said, "My own garden is my own garden and will allow nobody to play in it." So he built a high wall all around the garden. Also put up a notice board saying trespassers will be prosecuted. He was very selfish. The poor children had no place to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and the children did not like it. Then the spring came all over the country. There were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of Selfish Giant Only in the garden of Selfish Giants it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it as there were no children and the trees forgot to blossom. The only people who were pleased, who were happy, were the snow and the frost. The snow is here personified as a people. So the snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak. Cloak is a loose full gown to wear. And the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the cold north wind to stay with them. The north wind came and stayed with them. The giant was wrapped in furs, in warm clothes, and he rode all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. Soon the hail came. Hail is the ice ball started raining on the roof of the castle in rattling sound, the too noisy sound. The giant became grey with cold and his breath like ice. He couldn't understand that why the spring is so late, and watched his garden through the window. He thought that there will a change in the weather, but the spring never came, nor the summer, and the autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but the giant's garden she gave none. One morning, the giant was lying in the bed and heard some lovely music. The hail stopped dancing over his head. The north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open window. The giant said to himself that he believed the spring has come at last, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. He saw a most wonderful sight. Through the hole in the wall, the children crept in, and they were sitting in branches of the trees. And the trees were so glad. They had covered themselves with blossoms. The birds were flying and twittering with delight, with happiness merrily. And the flowers were looking up through the grass and laughing. Here also the personification used for the grass, laughing as person. Only in the farthest corner of the garden it was still winter, and a little boy was standing in it. He was too tiny to climb the tree branches, the poor tree still quite covered with frost and snow, the north wind also roaring above it. The tree urged the little boy to climb, and it also bent its branches down as low as the tree could. But the little boy was unable to climb. The giant's heart melted and exclaimed, "How selfish I have been! Now I know why the spring wouldn't come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground for ever and ever." He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he opened the front door softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened and that they all ran away. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him in his hand gently and put him up into the tree, and the tree broke out at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched his two arms and flung them around the giant's neck and kissed him. The other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them also the spring came back. The giant said, "It is your garden, little children," and he took the biggest axe, knocked down the wall, and when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. The giant inquired, "Where is your little companion?" The children answered, "He has gone away." "We don't know," said the giant. "You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow." But the little children said that they did not know him, where he lived, and had never seen him before. The giant felt very sad. The giant was kind to all the children, yet he longed for waiting for his first little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would like to see him," he used to say. One winter morning he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now because he knew what it is merely merely the spring wait, and that the flowers were resting only for the spring. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight, the beautiful sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree, quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden and silver fruit hung down from them, and under it the little boy was stood. He ran downstairs in great joy and out into the garden. When he came quite close to the little boy, his face grew red with anger because he found on the palms of the child's hand prints of two nails, and the prints of two nails were on the feet. The giant shouted, "Who has dared to wound you? Tell me, I may take my big sword and slay him." "No, these are the wounds of love," answered the child. "Who are you?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him. He knelt on his knee before the little child, and the child smiled. He said, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found that the giant lying under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. It means the giant was no more, and that little boy was an angel who took the giant with him to the heaven. Thank you and Jai Hind.